In Activity 2, Composition of Ocean Water, students learn more about the chemical composition of ocean water. They first discuss ways to distinguish between samples of fresh water and salt water, and evaporate the water from each sample and examine the substance that remains. Students then compare the crystal residue from the saltwater sample to ordinary table salt, and finally speculate about how the oceans became salty. You will need the following materials from the kit. Activity Sheet 2, plastic cups, evaporating dishes, magnifiers, toothpicks, black construction paper, table salt, and a plastic spoon. You will also need to provide pencils, chalk, pair of scissors, roll of masking tape, and tap water. To prepare for Session 1, make a copy of Activity Sheet 2 for each student. The night before the activity, prepare 2 quarts of ocean water by filling a plastic 1-gallon container half full of warm water. Add 6 spoonfuls of table salt and stir until all of the salt crystals have dissolved. Do not re-stir in the morning. Before class, prepare the fresh water by filling a second 1-gallon container half full of tap water. Then cut the black construction paper in half widthwise, 1/2 sheet per team. Each team of 2 will need 2 plastic cups, one with fresh water and the other with ocean water, 2 evaporating dishes, half a sheet of black construction paper, 4 pieces of masking tape to label the cups and dishes, and some chalk for labeling the paper. To begin Session 1, distribute Activity Sheet 2 and have students answer the first question. Next, divide the class into teams of 2. Explain that you are going to give them 2 samples of water. One is fresh water, like they'd find in rivers and lakes, and the other is similar to ocean water. Challenge them to determine which is which. Distribute the cups of tap water and a piece of masking tape to each team. Tell the teams to label this cup A. Then distribute a cup of salt water to each team and have teams label this cup B. Encourage students to visually compare the cups of water and answer question 2. Guide students to understand that while fresh water looks no different from ocean water, they are definitely different substances. This is because ocean water contains dissolved salt. Explain that to dissolve means to thoroughly mix with and disappear into another substance. Make sure students know that they are not to taste these substances, and then instruct them to answer question 3 on their activity sheets. Distribute 2 evaporating dishes to each team and tell students to label the dishes A and B with pieces of tape. Tell students to pour a small amount of water sample A into dish A, just enough to cover the bottom, and then to pour a small amount of sample B into dish B. Give each team half a sheet of black construction paper and have them write their names along the edge with chalk. Place the dishes on top of the paper on a sunny windowsill or in a warm spot. Tell students to leave their water samples overnight and to answer question 4 on their activity sheets. Then discard the unused water in the containers and cups, rinse them, let them air dry, and finally return them along with the salt to the kit. To prepare for Session 2, each student will need his or her copy of Activity Sheet 2, a pencil, and a toothpick. Each team of 2 will need a magnifier, their dishes from Session 1, the piece of black construction paper on which the dishes sat, a pinch of table salt, and some tap water. To begin Session 2, have students retrieve their Petri dishes. Ask students to observe what happened to the water in each dish and record their observations in question 5. Distribute a magnifier and a toothpick to each student. Ask students to examine the contents of both dishes and answer question 6 on their activity sheet. Ask students, where did this white substance come from? students will probably guess that the white substance was left behind when the water in dish B evaporated, meaning that it was dissolved in water sample B. Using the toothpick, have students scrape a bit of the substance onto the black paper and examine it with their magnifiers. Then ask, what do you notice about this substance? Students should note that the substance contains cube-shaped crystals. Have students draw a picture of the crystals as they appear under the magnifier. Then place a pinch of table salt on each team's construction paper. Encourage students to compare the table salt with the crystals from dish B and record any similarities or differences they see between the two in question 8. Explain to the class that ocean water contains a large amount of sodium chloride, the chemical name for the most abundant salt in ocean water. Sodium chloride is also the substance from which ordinary table salt is made. Ask students, so which dish do you think contained a water sample similar to ocean water? Students should conclude that water sample B was similar to ocean water. Then ask students, where do you think the salts in ocean water come from? Accept their ideas, then explain that salts and a number of other minerals are contained in continental rocks. As the rocks erode, the salts and minerals they contain dissolve in rainwater and get washed into streams, which empty into rivers and get carried to the ocean. Even though water is constantly evaporating from the ocean, the water is replaced by rainfall and by runoff from the land, which keeps the salinity, or the measure of salts in water, of the ocean about the same over time, about 3.5%. Finally, let students know that in Activity 3, they will learn more about the salinity of ocean water and an interesting effect it has on ships and swimmers alike. To conclude the activity, discard the toothpicks and construction paper. Rinse and dry the dishes and return all materials to the kit. For science background, reinforcement activities, curriculum connections, and information about the Delta Science Reader, please consult your DSM Teacher's Guide.